I remember the sound, that deafening crash echoing through my quiet morning like thunder ripping open the sky, wood splintering everywhere, shards flying across the worn linoleum of my kitchen floor. And there she was, Vivian Hargrove, the iron-fisted president of the Harborview Homeowners Association, standing triumphant in the doorway with a sledgehammer gripped in her manicured hands. Her face twisted in a frozen grin of victory, like she'd just conquered some ancient fortress instead of my humble family cabin, the early light catching the beads of sweat on her forehead as she heaved from the effort, her eyes wild with the thrill of dominance. Behind her, a pair of jittery security guys hovered, their phones out, capturing what they thought would be my humiliating defeat, my arrest, my end, fumbling with the devices as if unsure whether to zoom in on the chaos or back away from the impending fallout. But I didn't move a muscle, just sat there at the scarred oak table Grandpa had built with his own hands, the wood still bearing faint scorch marks from his soldering iron experiments, while my silver-haired guest beside me lifted his coffee cup with the steady calm of someone who'd seen far worse storms, his fingers steady despite the intrusion. "Vivian," I drawled, letting the name hang in the air like a challenge, savoring the shift in her posture as confusion flickered across her features. "Allow me to introduce Inspector Harlan Whitaker, retired head of the State Police Oversight Bureau, still packs his credentials everywhere he goes," tucked in his wallet alongside photos of his grandkids. Her expression shattered in an instant, that smug glow draining away faster than blood from a fresh wound, her shoulders slumping as the reality sank in, the hammer slipping from her fingers to thud against the floor, rolling slightly on the uneven planks, and in that moment, I felt a quiet surge of satisfaction bubbling up inside, the kind that comes from knowing the tables had finally turned, mixed with a pang of sorrow for how far she'd fallen into her own delusions of power. But what would you do if some self-appointed neighborhood tyrant smashed right through your front door, demanding control over your life, your land, your memories, the very essence of who you are? Where are you tuning in from right now? Let me rewind the clock 6 months, pull you back to how this nightmare unfolded, because it wasn't just about a door. It was about roots, about legacy, about fighting for what was rightfully mine in a world that sometimes forgets the meaning of justice, where small acts of defiance can ripple into waves of change. I'm Ethan Caldwell, 45 years old, a retired Marine Corps engineer with a bum right leg courtesy of a roadside bomb in Iraq that turned a routine patrol into a blur of fire and pain. Nothing glamorous, just the wrong turn on the wrong day. The shrapnel embedding deep enough to require multiple surgeries and endless therapy sessions that left me with a permanent hitch in my step and nightmares that faded but never fully vanished. When Grandpa passed last fall, he willed me his pride and joy, a cozy cabin nestled on 3 acres by Silverwood Reservoir, a slice of paradise with logs that still whispered of his cigar smoke and engine grease, the walls adorned with faded photos of family gatherings, fishing trophies gleaming on the mantel, complete with a weathered pier where he'd schooled me on the art of waiting, of reeling in not just fish but life lessons amid the gentle lap of water against wood, the creak of the boards underfoot, a soundtrack to my childhood summers. That pier had stood through 80 seasons, surviving floods, feuds, and even a failed mall development that nearly swallowed the town whole, its pilings reinforced by Grandpa himself after a particularly brutal storm in '78. The cabin perched on the fringe of Harborview Heights, where rows of cookie-cutter mansions popped up like overpriced weeds, all beige and bland, manicured lawns stretching endlessly. And that's where Vivian Hargrove ruled supreme. HOA president for 8 unchallenged years, the type of woman in her late 50s with hair sprayed into an unbreakable fortress, always in starched blazers even on sweltering days. Her makeup impeccable, yet somehow harsh, cruising around in a gleaming black SUV with plates screaming Queen Bee, her scent arriving like a warning shot, lilacs laced with arrogance. And when she spoke, her words whistled sharp, like wind through a cracked window, each syllable laced with condescension. Our paths first crossed at Grandpa's memorial service, amid the murmurs of shared stories and plates of cold cuts, the air heavy with the scent of lilies and quiet sobs. When she cornered me by the punch bowl, her eyes scanning the cabin through the glass like a predator sizing up prey, her heels clicking impatiently on the tile, deepest sympathies, she hissed with that artificial sweetness. But let's talk about integrating into our Harborview HOA. Just $600 a month. Imagine the boost to your equity, the uniformity it brings to our pristine community. She actually whipped out an application form right there. Amid the grief, her audacity hitting like a slap, the paper crisp and official looking. But I turned her down flat, explaining the cabin stood outside her domain, independent as the day it was built, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat from the day's emotions. Her painted smile cracked just a fraction. "We'll revisit this, vet," she muttered, spitting the word like poison, her nails digging slightly into the form as she crumpled it back into her purse. And I should have sensed then her deep-seated disdain for folks like me, ex-military types who didn't bend easily. Unlike the timid suburbanites she bullied daily, their complaints silenced by her endless committees and fines. 3 weeks on, the assaults began, a formal notice landing in my mailbox claiming my peer infringed on HOA waterfront rights, ordering its demolition or else, the legalese dense and threatening, like it had been drafted in a storm of spite, complete with threats of liens and court orders. But us engineers, we thrive on facts, on blueprints, so I dove into the dusty archives at the county records office, a basement tomb reeking of mildew and faded dreams, shelves groaning under yellowed folders, and unearthed treasure, Grandpa's original title from 1942, granting eternal access to the reservoir, the pier noted as a historic marker, proving in black and white that age trumped aggression in the eyes of the law, the ink still bold after decades. I fired back with photocopies, marked in neon for emphasis, thinking that might end it. But no, she stormed up my dirt path at dawn in that SUV, stilettos stabbing the earth like daggers, her floral cloud choking the air as she snarled. "Ethan, I've evicted 5 holdouts from this reservoir. You'll make 6, her voice rising with each word, gesturing wildly at the water as if it were her personal kingdom. Maplebrook was your classic divided burg, 9,000 souls split between old-timers whose families named the streets and newcomers craving gated bliss, her HOA clutching 70% of the shoreline and hungry for more, with the mayor, her sister's husband, turning a blind eye, his office decorated with plaques from her fundraisers, and Sheriff Ellis sporting fresh gear that screamed kickbacks, his patrol car often parked at her events. Locals whispered he played fair in land squabbles, meaning he played for her wallet. Then came the buzz of chainsaws at sunrise on a weekend, yanking me from sleep to find her crew erecting a barbed wire barrier across my access road, not mending anything but trapping me in, Vivian overseeing in a teal ensemble fit for a sales pitch, clipboard clutched like a scepter, her assistants nodding obediently. "Rise and shine, vet," she trilled, her sibilance slicing the crisp air, repossessing communal land per our revised map. She lingered on revised, like a thief bragging about the loot. They'd already sunk posts and were hacking at the grand old maple Grandpa planted when Mom was born, the trunk etched with generations of initials. Mine from age 8 right below his, bark chipped where weed hung swings, and something snapped inside me. Not rage, but resolve, the kind forged in deserts far away, memories of patrols flashing as I grabbed my phone. Video rolling. "Fellas, mind showing your permits?" The saw whined to a halt, the lead guy mumbling about being helpers. No credentials in sight, sweat beading on his brow under her glare, and I upped the ante. "Know this maple's protected heritage? State fines $150 per inch of girth, and she's a solid 38 around." You could see the dollars tallying in their eyes, $5,700 of regret, and I phoned the environmental agency on speaker. "Hey, Martha, Ethan Caldwell here. Got intruders sawing the Caldwell maple at 1923 Silverwood Lane, the one from 53. Her shock echoed, and the workers bolted like startled deer, tools abandoned. Vivian quaking with fury, her papers fluttering as she vowed revenge, one sheet landing in the muck where I accidentally pressed it deeper underfoot. That sparked a fire in my gut, a quiet vow to protect not just the land but the memories woven into every branch, every board, because this wasn't mere property. It was blood, it was family, and no entitled overseer would strip that away without a fight, the injustice gnawing at me like an old wound reopening. The retaliation escalated like a gathering storm, Violation notices flooding my mail daily, each more ridiculous than the last. Lawn edging off by a quarter inch, $60. Kayak tilted at 85 degrees, $90. Porch light dim on the flagpole, $120. And that flag one cut deep, the stars and stripes I defended overseas, bled for, lost brothers under. Now reduced to a petty fine by someone who'd never known sacrifice, her signatures looping arrogantly at the bottom of each form. 2 weeks, 52 citations, $2,100 demanded. But Vivian slipped up, signing each one personally. Every envelope stamped and traceable, turning her harassment into my arsenal. Because in this war of words and wills, her own records would become the noose around her neck, each date a nail in her coffin. Then the bureaucrats arrived, a duo from the Water Resources Department, sheepish as they cited complaints about my pier harming the ecosystem, needing to assess for teardown, their badges glinting awkwardly in the sun, but I welcomed them with fresh brew. Pulling files from Grandpa's era, 1942 Army Engineers Corps sign-off by Colonel Elias Hargrove, her forgotten uncle. The irony thick as fog rolling off the reservoir, his signature faded but authoritative. They inspected half-heartedly, snapped pics, and departed with mutters about her endless filings wearing thin, exchanging glances that spoke of shared frustration. But I knew she'd snuck onto my land for evidence, footprints still fresh in the mud. So I countered with a network of wildlife cams, high-tech eyes in the dark, positioned like sentinels from my service days, wires hidden under foliage, capturing the absurd. Her guards fumbling at midnight, one snapping boat tags, the other splashing into the water chased by a possum, hilarious in hindsight but sinister in intent, their whispers caught on audio plotting further sabotage. Night 4 delivered the gut punch. Footage of a goon dumping poison into the soil around the century-old pear tree that fed the neighborhood come harvest. Tests confirming gasoline and weed killer, crossing from nuisance to felony vandalism. The leaves already wilting by morning, and my blood boiled, not just for the tree, but for the legacy it represented, Grandpa's hands planting it. Our family picnics beneath its shade. Jars of preserves lining shelves from its fruit, now targeted in a bid to break me. The by tragedy of nature's quiet endurance shattered by greed. I duplicated the videos, lodged complaints with state troopers since Sheriff Ellis dragged his feet on minor crimes, his office voicemail always full, and went public, uploading clips to the Maplebrook forum with a caption warning of nocturnal sabotage, the post exploding locally, 900 shares in hours, outrage building like wildfire, comments pouring in from neighbors I'd never met. Though Vivian had it yanked by mass flags, tech giants blind to grassroots fury. Then Eleanor Hayes, ex-HOA board secretary who quit in disgust, reached out for a diner meet, sliding over a dossier thick as a novel over slices of tart cherry pie. The booth sticky with syrup, years of ledgers, she confided, exposing Vivian siphoning dues into her shell company Hargrove Properties Incorporated, flipping seized homes at profit. Totals hitting $1.4 million over 6 years. Board dissenters hit with the same torment I'd endured. One family's garage mysteriously torched after. Questioning finances, the insurance claim denied due to her connections. The revelations fueled a quiet rebellion. My initial chat group swelling to 40 allies, convening in Martha's shed under cover of casseroles and shared fury. Lanterns casting long shadows as stories unfolded. Vivian unwittingly forging us into a force through her cruelty, bonds strengthening over coffee and confessions. Whispers turned vicious, painting me as the volatile ex-Marine, unstable, a ticking bomb. Clerks flinching at the store, appointments vanishing, her twisting my service into a stigma, and it tasted metallic, that old combat adrenaline. But I channeled it, recognizing desperation in her smears, her network fraying at the edges. My outboard motor seized one dawn, tank laced with sand, wiring stripped, $3,500 fix, cameras conveniently blinded by paint. Her handiwork obvious, the acrid smell lingering. Then the county branded my cabin a derelict eyesore, slated for raising post-inspection by cousin Reginald Hargrove. But a quick database dive revealed his certification lapsed in 2020, invalidating 3 years of sham checks, all funneling properties to her empire, 19 victims in total, their dreams bulldozed for profit, families scattered like leaves in wind. When he showed for the walkthrough, clipboard primed for doom, I demanded his creds up front, video rolling, and he fled mid-stammer, leaving pre-filled condemnation forms. Premature judgment exposed, his truck kicking up dust in retreat. The state board devoured my report, suspending him, reopening old cases, 19 families glimpsing redemption, letters of thanks arriving in my mail, and Vivian raged at my fence that night, spewing threats, admitting ties to officials, her tirade gold on tape, backed up obsessively, her voice cracking under the strain. I shifted gears, contacting Inspector Harlan Whitaker from vet circles, luring him with phishing and fraud, his reply swift, truck rumbling up the path days later. Sorting Grandpa's relics, I struck dynamite. An antique envelope with a 1921 plat map, fragile as whispers, sealing a clause. Any aggression from the 412-acre tract against Caldwell's reverted it all to us, the parchment crinkling under my fingers. My buddy attorney Lucas Grant confirmed its validity, a dormant bomb triggered by her onslaught, potentially claiming $35 million in land. But I held back, seeking precision over pandemonium, those mansion dwellers' innocence in her game, their kids playing in yards unaware of the rot beneath. Harlan arrived incognito, dissecting my evidence, dubbing it RICO grade, organized crime in suburbia, and we plotted, baiting her overreach while rallying in Martha's barn, 55 strong, dividing into squads, tech for streams, legal for filings, finance tracing her laundered cash to offshore havens, spreadsheets glowing on laptops late into the night. I looped in journalist Lena Brooks, her eyes lighting at the scoop, notepad filling rapidly, and prepped the stage, whispers spreading old school, the tension coiling like a spring, hearts pounding with the weight of years of injustice, the by-tragedy of shattered lives fueling our resolve, because this was for the uprooted families, for Grandpa's unyielding spirit, a righteous reckoning building to its peak. Alliances tested in the quiet hours before dawn. The trap snapped shut that fateful Sunday, pre-dawn volunteers converging like shadows, tech rigs humming in my den, Lena's team framing shots, chairs arrayed like a tribunal, the reservoir's mist veiling our ambush as streams flickered live, viewer counts climbing from hundreds to thousands, a global audience unwittingly joining our stand against tyranny, chats buzzing with support from strangers moved by our plight. Vivian charged in at 6 sharp, her SUV spearheading a parade of enforcers, hammer in tow, bellowing my eviction for fabricated debts, her purple attire a badge of delusion as she swung, door buckling under blows, bursting in triumphant, only to freeze at Harlan's badge, her weapon clattering, face paling as I rose, unveiling the horde of 250 witnesses, victims reborn as avengers, phones aloft, their faces etched with years of suppressed anger, her guards deserting, Lena narrating the felonies. Live, microphones capturing every gasp. FBI agent Carla Ruiz emerged, cuffs ready, detailing the cascade, racketeering, fraud, conspiracy, as Vivian tripped in flight, her queen bee, plate mocking her fall, gravel embedding in her palms. I brandished the ancient deed, explaining the reversion, her empire crumbling, but I tempered mercy, dissolving the HOA, gifting deeds sans fees, mandating no future tyranny, restoring stolen homes at cost, funneling seized funds to scholarships and aid, because vengeance without healing is hollow, and as cheers swelled, Vivian wailed please, but I recounted her sins, poisoned gardens, arson dreams, weaponized service, declaring her reign ended, prison her new domain, the crowd's roarous symphony of liberation, streams hitting 70,000, her downfall viral, headlines flashing on screens worldwide. 6 months on, the reservoir gleamed under free skies, kids splashing from the pier she'd targeted, laughter echoing where silence once reigned, the Enfield family, once displaced, grilling at their reclaimed diner, crowds savoring redemption, aromas of spices wafting across the water. Vivian drew 14 years federal, no leniency, her network unraveling across 5 states, 1,700 victims empowered, courtrooms filled with testimonies echoing our own, sparking the Caldwell reform law mandating HOA transparency nationwide, bills passing with bipartisan support. Her mansion became our hub, library shelves where she'd schemed now nurturing young minds, story hours drawing wide-eyed children, Harlan mentoring amid base halls, his tales blending law with life lessons. Property soaring 35% in Liberty's glow, the Liberty Fest drawing 6,000, Agent Ruiz hailing our blueprint for justice, fireworks illuminating faces alight with hope. As dusk painted the water in fire, I spoke from the mended porch. Bullies thrive on silence, but unity shatters chains. Document, unite, persist, and Grandpa's maple stood sentinel, roots deep as our victory. Maplebrook breathing anew, wounds mending in community, forged from fire, new traditions blooming like the pear tree's revived blossoms. But was this vigilante justice or rightful defense? Where does retribution cross into excess? And in a world of unchecked power, is silence complicity or survival? Share your thoughts below, because every story like this begs the question, when authority turns toxic, do the ends justify the means?